I was a broken child. Nobody was there to actually try to help me, right? My mom did the best she could. I had already put up my walls. My mom struggled with drugs and alcohol, and my dad had anger issues.
Did you ever feel at any point you had control over the destination of your life?
No. I still thought outside things would make me feel better. If I had a car, if I had a beautiful girlfriend, this would make me a better person.
You're not alone in that. This is something that a lot of us go through at that age.
I'm drinking, I'm smoking weed, I'm getting in fights. 19 years old, I get arrested. I ended up going to prison. For the first time ever, I was like, okay, I need to make some changes.
What was that crack in the armor that made you say, I'm gonna take that step?
Honestly, I don't know. I actually became the guy you went to if you wanted to get healthy, if you wanted to get fit.
Early on, this is what you wanted to do. You had several opportunities to say, the world's against me. You didn't do it. You kept pushing through.
But it sparked something inside of me. Here's a business owner telling me I could open my own business in the same space as her. And I was like, this could be a thing.
Thank you everyone for tuning in. I'm speaking today with Paul Casey, a personal trainer based in the San Francisco Bay Area, actually Hayward specifically for all my East Bay fans here. I'm really excited to talk to Paul. He's got a very, very interesting story about where he grew up, what challenges he faced, and how he was able to overcome pretty much a lot of the things that we've seen people go through. So I'm very excited to talk to Paul about it, and we can get into his personal training business after that. But Paul, thank you so much for showing up here. I really appreciate you coming out.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Thank you, and thank you for coming out on a Sunday. I know Sunday's a day where a lot of times we want to spend time with the family or go enjoy life, and you decided to take some time out of your day to come out here to talk to me, and I'm very appreciative for it, so thank you so much.
Yeah, it's literally my only day off, but I was like, you know what? This is important. So
I love to hear it, Paul. So before we get into it, why don't you give me like about a minute or so brief about who you are, sort of where you came from, and what you're doing now, and we can go right into it.
Yeah, so my name, like you said, is Paul Casey. I own and operate a private personal training facility in Hayward called A Better You Fitness. And basically, I grew up in a broken home, had a lot of traumatic experiences as a kid. There's a lot of drugs, alcohol, and incarceration in my story. And at about 32 years old, I decided this wasn't a lifestyle I wanted to live anymore, and I started to make some conscious changes. And I decided that I wanted to make a difference in the world. And fitness has always been a thing for me. Helping people was something I was good at. So I became obsessed with helping people get healthy through fitness, through nutrition, through mindset training. I got out of prison a little over 4 years ago, and I dedicated every waking moment to craft, getting better at my craft so that I could help people change their lives through fitness, through nutrition and mindsets.
That's such an inspiring message that you went through what you went through in that quick 20 seconds or 30 seconds or so, and that you were able to come out of that, and now look what you're doing for everybody else. But let's kind of go back into your early story. So how was life for you as a kid? And did you grow up around here in the Bay Area?
So I kind of bounced around as a kid. I was born in San Mateo. I don't remember living in San Mateo because I was so young when we moved to Fremont. My mom and dad moved us to Fremont. My little brother was born. Childhood was okay. I was a good kid, good student, was in Boy Scouts, did all the things, The thing is, my mom struggled with drugs and alcohol, and my dad had anger issues, right? So growing up, my mom was struggling with drugs and alcohol. My dad was verbally and physically abusive. Now looking back on it, I understand he did the best he could based upon how he was raised, right? He wasn't intentionally trying to hurt me, but he did what he thought was best to mold me into the man he believed I needed to be. So since my mom, struggled with drugs and alcohol and couldn't get clean, and my dad, yelled and hit me, I assumed that they didn't love me. And so I assumed they didn't love me. I stopped loving myself, and I became an angry child. So, I started getting in trouble. Eventually, my mom and dad got divorced. I was like about 11 or 12 years old. They got divorced. My dad ended up getting remarried, and we moved to Tucson, Arizona. So I show up to Tucson, Arizona, right? I'm in 6th grade. I'm the new kid from California, right? So I don't fit in, right? Already, I'm showing up to this new school. I don't fit in. I start getting picked on, start getting bullied. So I decided that what I wanted to do is try to learn how to wrestle, right? I was going to be on the wrestling team. I figured if I was on the wrestling team, maybe people would like me. I could be popular. A lot of popular kids in my school, especially freshman year in high school. All the popular kids were playing football or wrestling. And I figured I'd do wrestling. Problem was I was so incredibly skinny that I was on the wrestling team, smallest guy on the team, and I actually had to practice with the only girl on the team. Right? Yeah, it was kind of tough, man.
Yeah, I mean.
So here I am, a freshman in high school, right? I've only been living in Arizona for about 2 years, so I don't really have a lot of friends out here. And I'm wrestling with this girl on the team, and her boyfriend is on the team as well. And he, on the other hand, is a big jock. You know, he's a captain of the football team. And he's not happy that I'm wrestling with his girlfriend, right? So it led to a lot of bullying. It led to me getting picked on. They threw me in the trash can before. Like, just these things that, like, you shouldn't do to another human being, right? And, of course, you know, I was a skinny kid. I was angry, so I was willing to fight for myself. But it's hard to fight when people are 2 times your size and there's 3 or 4 people, right? There's not much you can do about that. So then I found a crowd that did accept me. I found the skater group. I started skateboarding with them. They were smoking weed and drinking alcohol, so I joined them in that. I figured I needed to fit in somewhere, right? So at that point, I started hanging out with them, smoking weed, drinking, and that just kind of started a path that it lit the addiction within me, right? So mom and dad are both recovering addicts and alcoholics. Both of them have that in their gene. I have it in my genes as well. So, 15 years old, I'm in freshman year in high school. I start ditching school. I'm drinking. I'm smoking weed. I'm getting in fights. My dad got kind of tired of it and sent me to move in with my mom. By now, my mom had got her life in order, right? So she was clean and sober.
She's back here in the Bay Area.
She's in the Bay Area, yeah, San Jose, right? So she's clean and sober. She's a nurse. She was doing the right things, right? So me and my brother moved here to San Jose to live with her. But now, once again, I'm the new kid again, right? Once again, I'm showing up to a school where I don't know anyone and no one knows me. Well, I'd already learned in Arizona how to be a chameleon, how to blend in with one group. And so when I got to San Jose, I just blended in with a different group, right? I started associating with a different type of people that were in my neighborhood, right? And I started indulging in other type of drugs, right? And I started marijuana and alcohol was not enough. The older kids that I was hanging out with were doing other things, and I started participating with them. And that led me down a pretty bad path. So at 15 years old, I got arrested for the first time, got taken into juvenile hall. They gave me a house arrest bracelet. I was in juvenile hall for about 2 weeks. They put me on house arrest, and when I got out after those 2 weeks, I had this ankle bracelet, but nothing had been addressed. None of my anger issues had been addressed. My drug addiction hadn't been addressed. Like, these things that I struggled with as a kid that led me to be angry and led me to commit crime and led me to, get in fights and things like that. Like, nothing had actually been addressed, right? I feel that, in a lot of ways, the juvenile system is not set up properly to actually help the youth, right? Mm-hmm. Because no counselor ever came and told me, I understand that you're going through some stuff at home. How can I help you? All they said was, okay, you have a drug problem. You need help. Maybe you should go to a meeting. But here's your house arrest bracelet. You have to stay at home. You can only go to school and then come home. That's it. Mm-hmm. So I was like, screw that, right? So I started doing exactly what I knew what to do, running the streets. And so eventually they caught me, took me to juvenile hall again. Spent a couple months there, and then they decided that because house arrest didn't work. My mom couldn't control me. They were going to control me, right? So they put me into a boys' home, right? So now I'm in a boys' home with a bunch of other troubled youth, right? There's like 10 of us in each house, so 3 houses in the program I was in. And so a couple fights later, I get kicked out of one house. A couple fights later, I get kicked out the second house. Third house, I ended up actually throwing a desk at my teacher, right? And they basically kicked me out of there and sent me to juvenile hall for 6 months. I sat 6 months in juvenile hall. I got out. I'm 17 years old. I go back to my mom's. The anger, the drug addiction, the alcoholism, none of that had still not been addressed, right? For a while, they put me on psych meds. They said, you're bipolar, you have ADHD, here's a bunch of medication, it'll fix you. It didn't work for me, right? Because that's not what was going on. I was a broken child, and nobody was there to actually try to help me, right? My mom did the best she could, but by then, I had already put up my walls based upon what happened in the past. And 17 years old, my mom actually found some drugs in my room and was like, hey, if this is the life you're living, you can't live it under my roof. So I left. And I was homeless at 17 years old. I dropped out of high school at 17 years old. And I wandered the streets, couch to couch, sleeping in carports, sleeping at the college nearby my house, just bouncing around, high on drugs, just trying to make it. By the time I was 18, I went to jail for the first time as an adult. Spent about 6 months in jail, got out again, and went back to the same thing, right? Here's the problem, Mike, was that every time I would get locked up, I'd say, I want to change. I don't want to live like this, but I didn't know how to change, and there was really no support system. There was no resources for me to change, right? I did have a support system in my mom, my stepdad, but I didn't want to hear it from them, right? I had no positive role models, no mentors, no older men that were like, hey, Paul, this is what you need to do to make some changes, right? Here's how I did it, right? And so because of that, I kept going back to the only older gentlemen I knew in my neighborhood that weren't doing positive things. They weren't like, hey, man, you should get a job. You should go to school. They're like, hey, man, here's some drugs. Go sell it for us and let's make some money. Hey, man, here's a gun. Let's go do this or that. And all these things that aren't positive, right? But these people were telling me this is what you got to do to survive in this world. So I was convinced that this is how I had to make it.
This is San Jose, right?
This is San Jose, yes. Okay. I was in San Jose, yeah. So, San Jose is crazy because one side of the street, you have a nice neighborhood, and the other side of the street, you have straight ghetto. It's weird because you can, go 2 blocks down the street and have $1 million houses, or you can be in an apartment complex where I was at, where there's tagging all over the wall and homeless people wandering around digging through the trash, and so basically at 19 years old, or 18 going almost 19, I finally started taking some steps to make a change. I went to a program in Hayward, a drug program. And this is the first. It's crazy where the world works.
Actually, you know what? I want to get into that, but I want to go back a little bit because there's a couple things you said that I think are really important.
Yeah.
One of the misconceptions regarding drug use is that somehow you fall into opiates or you fall into meth because of, you have nothing else going on for your life, or some more conspiracy theorists might say the pharmaceutical industry kind of just throws it at you to say you're having pain here, have this solve a problem. But this is back when you were 15 years old and you sort of got into drugs mostly out of peer pressure.
Yeah, mostly to fit in. Yeah.
Wow. So that first experience when your buddies at the time are doing whatever it is they're actually doing and they're asking you to try stuff, were you even enjoying it? You're like, well, I got to fit in with the crowd and this is what they're doing, so I guess I just got to go with the flow.
Actually, no. I think the first time I smoked weed, I got super paranoid, right? And I went home, I put all the eye drops, and I went home. I was like, my dad knows, right? And it wasn't even fun. Right? But then the next time, I was like, oh, I got away with that. Right? So I was like, I got away with it. I could do this again, right? And honestly, changing the way I felt about the world around me and changing the way I felt about myself was what attracted me to it, right? Because I didn't love myself because I felt like my parents didn't love me, so why should I love myself, right? And so that lack of self-love led me to feel like I needed to change that feeling, right? And then I felt like these people around me liked me or maybe even loved me because I was doing what they were doing.
Mm-hmm. Now, how about your mother, too? Because you said something interesting, is that she would find, the drugs in the home and say, not in my house, you're out of here. But in her youth, she struggled with that. Was there ever any sort of like, hey, you've been through this, Mom, so can you kind of help me out because you know what you're going through? Or her way of disciplining you was like, don't do what I did, and if you're going to do it, I don't want you around here.
So actually, yeah. So my mom actually, before she actually found the drugs, right, she knew I was getting high. She saw it, and she'd be like, honey, I need you to come with me to an A meeting. I need you to come with me to an AA meeting. I need you to get some help, right? My mom actually ended up going from being a nurse at a hospital to working at a rehabilitation clinic. And so when she worked at this rehabilitation clinic, she actually had tried to get me into that clinic several times, right? I went through her program that she worked at like 3 different times, right? So she would get me help.
Okay.
Right? So it was like, she would like, here, go here for 30 days, get cleaned up, and then you can come back. So like, that happened a few times, and I never let it sink in.
So was it more that the drugs were holding you back, or was it that pressure that I have to still fit into the group, so I still got to continue to do what I got to do?
It was mostly, I would say I hadn't worked on healing that broken little child within, right? That's the reality of it, right? Now that I've done a lot of work on myself, I know it was like, there was a lot of traumatic experiences that I hadn't healed from, right? And so I was like, I just felt like I couldn't be in my own skin, right? And I'll talk more about this as we move forward, right? Like, I didn't like the person I was, right? So if I'm high, I'm not the person I am. I'm the person I think I am when I'm on drugs, right? So it changes my whole perception of the reality and my whole perception of myself, right? But it also numbs everything, right? I can't sit here and be like, oh yeah, I'm so sad or I don't like my life because I'm just too loaded to even notice sometimes.
It's unbelievable because, just again, hearing that this whole started because, growing up, 2 parents, which technically speaking, if you have both parents around, that should give you a better chance to survive out there. And it was a situation that, frankly, was just not ideal on both sides of the coin. For me, both sides of your parents. And then on top of that, you're trying to fit in with a group of kids, because at that age, we sort of need that social experience. We need to have friends that we can connect with. And if you can't find people who have a positive influence, it's sort of, well, who else is here? Who can protect me from the bullying that I was facing, in this case, from somebody on the wrestling team and his crew? And how that just leads down this path that just seems to never get out of it. So I definitely see where you're coming from there. So continue on. You said you passed 18 years old. Where are you at now?
Yeah, so when I was 18, this was like the first time I actually started taking my sobriety, my clean, my recovery serious. I started going to meetings. I stopped using drugs and alcohol, and I started, like, I got a job, I got an apartment, I got a girlfriend. Like, things were going really good, when I thought things were going good. But I still hadn't really done any work on myself, right? So I was still angry, right? I was still not really loving myself. Right, I was trying to love myself through outside things, like, I had a pretty girlfriend, and I have a nice job, and I have my own apartment, and all these things that I thought made me a productive member of society. Right. But in reality, like, I hadn't really healed or fixed myself. Right. And so what ended up happening is actually the girlfriend ended up cheating on me. Right. And when I look back on it in hindsight, I kind of pushed her away based upon how I treated her. Right. So, if someone treated me the way I treated her, I'd probably cheat on them too. So, like, I wasn't a good boyfriend. So I can't be mad at her. Right. But as soon as that happened, it gave me an excuse to go back to what I know. Right. So I immediately went back to drugs. Right. Because I didn't want to feel the pain of heartbreak that comes when you get cheated on. And so I went back to using drugs. And I have my own apartment. Right. So now I have a party house. Right?
Yeah.
She's gone. I got my own apartment. I got a job, so I got a little bit of money. Right? I'm gonna quit my job and buy a bunch of drugs and become like this kingpin drug dealer that I thought I was gonna be. Right? It never worked out that way. And so within a couple months, I lost the apartment. Right? I wasn't paying the bills. And I ended up, basically staying with somebody else, where I basically would give them drugs to let me live at their house. And we ended up getting raided. Cops came in, and they found me with a bunch of drugs, a couple guns, and I ended up going to prison for the first time. So 19 years old, I get arrested, and I'm looking at my first time going to prison. All right. I was looking at like 10 years. I ended up getting 3 years with halftime, and because there was no violent offense or anything. And so at this time, for the first time ever, I was like, okay, I need to make some changes. Right. So I did a little bit of work. During my time, I did about 19 months. And during that time, I did a little bit of work. I read books, I did a couple self-help books. I really got into working out. I really got into fitness, right? So I would work out all the time. And I'd read every magazine and book I can get my hands on. And just kind of, it was an escape for me, right? So I did that time, but I had not addressed my actual drug addiction, right? I assumed that it was hard drugs were my problem, not marijuana, not alcohol. It's the hard stuff, right? Because if I do the hard stuff, that's when I get crazy. So I got out of prison, and I said, all right, I'm only going to smoke weed and drink. So I got out. I moved in with my mom, and I did good for about 6 months. I just smoked weed. I just drank. I got a job. I enrolled in college classes. I was going to San Jose City College, and I was like, all right, cool. I'm like kind of doing good. I'm maintaining, right? But the job didn't make enough money, right? And I went back to my old mindset of I think I'm going to become some kind of drug kingpin, right? Which, once again, doesn't happen for me. That's not my story, right?
And let me just clarify one thing here, so I know the audience knows. So you're in prison at this point. We're at which prison?
I was in Susanville.
Susanville. Okay, so Central California?
No, Northern California.
Northern.
It's like up by Reno.
Okay, that's good. Okay, so you're in there for 19 months?
19 months, yeah.
Okay, and at this time, you're like, okay, I need to get my crap together. So I'm going to read these books. I'm going to get into fitness. I see some positivity. You get out of prison, and you go straight to community college.
Yeah.
And you start to say, okay, I need to take the classes. I need to get my life together. So it sounds like at this point, you have everything. Okay, you got the mindset. You're going to go do things to make yourself better, correct?
Yes.
Okay, now what happened after there that sort of derailed it?
So, the biggest thing was I still had this belief system that I could just smoke weed and drink alcohol.
Okay.
Right? And it just doesn't work for me. I can't just do that. Right? And so, like, I thought that, I was 22 at the time. So it's legal for me to drink alcohol. So, let me drink on the weekends. And I would go to these bars and I would drink and I would see people I knew from the neighborhood, right? At the bars, and they'd be like, bro, like, we're making really good money out here right now. Like, things are, like, you want to make some money? Nah, man, I'm cool. I'm going to school, and they're like, I'm going to school. Okay, whatever, right? Mm-hmm. So eventually, I started to, like, eat away at me, like, why am I going to school? What am I doing wasting my time? Like, I could really make some money right now. Like, I'm still living at my mom's house. I'm 22 years old. I should have my own place and a car. And, like, I started getting these fantasies, right? And remember, like I told you, I still hadn't worked on myself. I still didn't love myself yet, Mike, right? And so I didn't love myself, and I still thought outside things would make me feel better, right? So I thought, if I had my own apartment, if I had a car, if I had a beautiful girlfriend, like, this would make me a better person, right? But I can't do that working. I was working at AT&T, and I was going to college. I was only taking 2 college classes, just the bare minimum to say I'm in school, And so I started trying to, live out this fantasy of being some kind of drug kingpin, and it just didn't work for me, right? I used more than I sold.
Now, why was this fantasy so important for you? Was it because you had this idea that if I'm this sort of kingpin, I'm going to have all the money in the world, I'm going to have all the women in the world, I'm going to have all the car? Was that sort of like in the back of your mind, this is what's going to make me happy?
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Right? Because I thought these outside things would make me happy.
You're not alone in that. This is something that a lot of us go through at that age. And I think we were talking about earlier off camera. It's just when we're young boys, 19, pretty much when we hit puberty till about mid to late 20s, all we care about is the clout. Now they call it clout. All we care about is the money, the car, the flashiness, because in my opinion, we're trying to get the respect from the other guys out there to say, hey, look what I have. And in turn, that respect from our peers gets us the respect of women. And if we do that, we think that we're in this better fantasy world. That's why we work so hard at that young of an age, just to get this status that we really have no business having yet. We haven't earned it, but we're trying to get it so early. It's almost not until we're in our 30s that we realize, yeah, I drive a Honda Civic now. I could care less if I'm driving the brand new BMW. Who am I trying to impress right now? I just need a car to get me from point A to point B. I'm glad it's paid off and I don't have to worry about doing all that stuff there. I have better things to do with my money. But when I'm 21, I got to have the rims. Yep. I got to be at the car meets. I got to meet my boys here, and then they're going to introduce me to all these other people. And it's funny because I think it's like a scientific thing, although I don't know the exact age. Somewhere around the age of 26 or so is when our minds as men start to finally develop. Women tend to develop their minds a little bit earlier. That's why we always say we're more immature as we get older.
Yeah.
But we really can't process a lot of the emotions, the feelings, the life experiences because we don't have that yet at that age. So we're sort of doing, well, that guy who's actually 32 years old has all this, and look at his attention. I need to get his stuff so I can get that now and put myself on the pedestal versus everybody else. And it's hard because you try to tell a lot of the young people that. We know through our life experience now that this is how it works, but trying to tell them then it's like, nah, I just want to, where's all the money at? Where's all the flash? So it seems to be like the mindset that your boys were telling you when you met them at that bar. It's like, why are you doing that, man? You could easily get all this stuff right here. Sound familiar?
Yeah, that's exactly what it was too.
That's crazy. So anyway, you're at the point now where you want to go back to this life. You're working at AT&T, you're at community college taking two classes, and now you're like, I'm going to get back into this lifestyle. So where are you at now at this point in your life?
So basically, I dove back into that lifestyle, right? I met up with those same boys that I saw at the bar, and I said, all right, guys, I'm ready. I got my paycheck from work. Let me just give you all my money, and let's make this happen, right? And so I went back to hustling, right? And realistically, it worked for a little while. I made a little bit of money. I got me a little car, and I felt like I was doing something special. But part of what comes with that lifestyle is the activities and the people that you start to deal with, right? And you start to deal with people that are not becoming of this world, right? So to say. It's
a nice way to say it.
Right? Because I started like running into different characters and dealing with different people that I just didn't see eye to eye with, right? And like I said, anger has always been a thing for me. I've always struggled with anger. And so I'll still this, and when now I've done a lot of work on myself, Mike, my anger comes from fear, right? You say something to me, I get mad because I'm afraid of what other people might think about what you just said to me, right? And I ended up in a verbal confrontation with somebody, and he called me a word that I was taught throughout my years of incarceration and throughout just growing up in the neighborhood, that, you know, like if another man calls you this word, right, you have to respond in a violent manner, right? And so I got in a verbal confrontation. This guy called me this word.
I'm guessing there are people around who saw this happen.
No, actually.
No,
there
you were
wasn't.
by yourself.
Yeah, that's the
Okay.
crazy part about it, right? When I see here, look at it now, I'm like, nobody else would have known he said this to me.
Yeah.
Only I would have known.
He didn't disrespect you, but not in front of everybody else where they're looking at you like, what are you going to do?
Exactly.
There was nobody around. Okay.
There was no reason for me to react the way I reacted, right? But the mentality, right, the thought process that was programmed into my brain from all these years was like, when someone says this to you, you must respond in a certain way, right? And so I responded in that way. And I pulled out a firearm. I threatened this dude's life, and then I left. I didn't do nothing to him, but I left, right? The threat was there. The act of violence was there. I left. This guy actually knew, like through a third party, he found out who I was. And next thing I know, I was not home. I was at my girlfriend's house. My mom called me the next morning and said, "What in the world did you do last night?" I said, "What do you mean?" She's like, "The cops kicked in our door last night looking for you. They had guns drawn, everything. They're looking for you. That they said you're armed and dangerous, and if they find you, they're going to shoot you." And so I was like, "No, they're not. I'm out of here." And I was on the run. I lasted 10 days. Lasted 10 days on the run. And I ended up getting arrested for assault with a firearm, criminal threats. And so here I was 22 years old. I didn't even make it a year out of prison from the first time. I was out for 9 months, Mike. 22 years old, looking at 27 years.
22 years old. So right up until this point when you're 22 years old, did you ever feel at any point you had control over the destination of your life?
No.
Never did.
No. I just felt like I was just running almost running on autopilot.
Unbelievable.
I was just doing what I thought was what I was supposed to be doing. And, you know, a combination of anger and drugs clouded my mind so much that I didn't even know what I was doing half the time.
Wow.
You know, like when I sit back now that I've, you know, been clean for as long as I have, and I've done so much work on myself, I've done a lot of reflection on my past, I've been able to look back on a lot of these things and be like, wow, like, why would I do that? That doesn't even make sense to me. But at that time, it made all the sense in the world. At that time, it's like, this is the smartest decision I can make right now. And now I look at it like, what was wrong with you, dude? You know, like,
Yeah.
you know?
I mean, if you could go back and talk to your younger self, I bet you would say, hey, you know, young Paul, don't do this because this is what's going to happen to you. Your young self probably would have said, you don't know what you're talking about. You know, you don't know how it's like here. You're older now. You don't really care. Or you don't know how it is. And then when you get older, you say, actually, yeah, he would have been right. I definitely didn't see the whole picture. Again, me personally, I think that comes down to the fact that our minds aren't fully developed yet. We really can't process all that stuff without the life experience and sometimes hitting rock bottom before it clicks. This is what can happen if you go down this path. In a way, you could say you were lucky because had you pulled that trigger or something else, you know, we may not even be having this conversation right now.
Definitely.
So at this point, 22 years old, you're back in the system now. What are you experiencing now that you're looking at this pretty hefty sentence now?
So real quick, I want to rewind a little bit to something you just said, though. If I could go back and tell that 15-year-old anything, I wouldn't tell them nothing, right? I recently spoke at a college, St. Mary's College in Moraga, last month. And actually a couple days ago, I spoke at a juvenile fire camp a couple nights ago. And that question came up both times. And the answer stays the same. I wouldn't tell that person nothing. And the reason being because everything I've been through to this day has made me the person I am today, has given me an opportunity to make a difference in the world, right? Had that kid listened to me at 15 and change his ways, I probably also wouldn't have the story I have to tell and the opportunity to try to save some lives.
You may not have the motivation now to do what you're doing now.
Or the story that can relate to others.
That's a great point right there, that
know?
you would go back and say nothing. Say, unfortunately, you're going to have to go through the next 10 years. I'm not going to tell you what's going to happen, even though I know what's going to happen. Luckily, people didn't get hurt to the point where you aren't going to be able to get on with the rest of your life.
Yeah.
That's an incredible thing. And I know as somebody in our 30s, when we try to go back and tell the young people, like, hey, do this, do that, whatever, and sometimes it's frustrating when they don't listen. And then we think about it, I wouldn't have listened at their age either. It's like, only when you're around the positive role models and you see how they live their lives and you see what they're doing to get ahead, the ethical, legal way, that's when things sort of say, you know what, okay, this is what they're doing to become successful. And then you sort of just pick up the little habits and you're surrounded by that positivity. Whereas, unfortunately, if you grow up in a very challenged environment, people don't understand. Sometimes it's just you have to survive every day. Like sometimes it's just a challenge just to get food on the table. Sometimes the people that you grow up with, they're here today and they're gone tomorrow. It's a different mindset. And, for you to be able to come out of that, which is a bad situation, don't get me wrong, to be where you're at now, we're having this conversation is so impactful there. So anyway, we went off track a little bit there, but going back to, you're facing 20 some odd years. Where are you at now?
All right. So I was 22. Actually, I got arrested right before my 23rd birthday. So 22, I ended up turning 23, a few days later. Literally, it was less than a week before my birthday. And so I'm looking at 27 years. The judge is telling me, you're going to be in your late 40s when you get out. I'm just my life is over. I'm just convinced my life is over at that point. And I'm just kind of... once again, I'm telling my mom and my little brother, hey, I'm going to change. But at the same time, I'm like, life's over. I'm going to be in here for forever. It seemed like so long, and so I ended up getting lucky, actually. I got sentenced to 10 years, right? And I say that's lucky because what I was looking at was quite a bit more than 10 years, right? So I got sentenced to 10 years. It was a violent offense, so I got 2 strikes. And I, had to do 85% of my time, which means I should have done 8.5 years. I should have done. Keyword, should have done, right? So I ended up, I actually ended up going back to Susanville, same prison I've been at before. I ended up going back there because I wasn't out for more than a year, and a lot of times they send you back to the same facility you left from.
Interesting. I never knew that.
Yeah. So they sent me back to Susanville, and at that time I was like, all right, 2 things I know I need to change. I need to change my body and I need to change my mind, right? So exercising and reading became a thing. And then I was able to participate in some college classes, some correspondence classes. So basically what they do is they give you a book, they give you a folder full of homework, and then there's a list of when the homework assignments are due, and you got envelopes and you do your homework and you send them out, right? So I started doing college classes like that. And I started getting college units, college credits. I started, reading a lot of, once again, books and magazines on fitness. I became obsessed with fitness. I actually became the guy you went to if you wanted to get healthy, if you wanted to get fit. Right?
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah. So it's
that's pretty impressive that you were the guy there, that they were coming to you and saying, hey,
it's actually crazy. I have a buddy. I just ran into him at the gym the other day, and he's like, "Man, I remember when you taught me. We were in prison together." He's like, "I remember in Susanville when you taught me how to do a pull-up."
Hey.
And so I became that person. Oh, you want to lose weight? Go talk to him. And they'd come talk to me, and I helped them build out a plan. And you want to do a
really
pull-up.
fast. How did that feel?
It felt good.
That you were the guy, despite everything you've been through, that people are now coming to you and asking for your help with this because they know you're knowledgeable about something. Is that like an empowerment thing? Holy, this could actually be a path for me.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It felt great. It felt really good to be have a skill set that was positive to an extent, So it was it felt good. But at that time, I still didn't have a seed planted in my mind that I wanted to do this for a living, right? At that time, it was kind of just me helping people out, and it was interesting for me. It was kind of a way to pass time. When I'm locked in my cell, what will I do? Oh, well, I got some workout plans I can build for somebody. Let me write these workout plans out. Let me read a book, a magazine, and say, oh, all right, well, we don't have dumbbells. How can we implement that with body weight movements? Oh, let me write this plan out, right? So I started doing that. I was in the way the prison system is in California, it's set up on a point scale, right? And the more points you have, the higher security level you are, right? And so I did have a higher point scale. So I was on a level 3 for about 3 years, cell living. I stayed out of trouble during that time. My points dropped. I went to a level 2, which is dorm living. I stayed there for about 2 years, and I ended up going to fire camp. Right? So I ended up becoming an inmate firefighter, and this is the first time ever in my entire life I felt like I was making a positive difference in the world.
This was your mid to late 20s?
Yes.
Okay. This is before all the major wildfires, right?
No, there was actually some major wildfires during that time.
Okay.
This is, 2012.
Okay.
So
all right.
2012, I went to fire camp, right? I had been in almost 5 years at that time. So I went to fire camp, became an inmate firefighter, and it was awesome. It was awesome to go on fires, to work, to have a little bit of freedom to learn a skill set. Right? I learned how to run a chainsaw. I learned how to, just do something productive. We'd go on fires. It was amazing, Mike. We'd go on fires and we'd see like kids with signs that say, "Thank you, firefighters, for saving our homes." And although it didn't say inmate firefighters, right, we still took that like they were talking to us, right? And they were, because the reality of it, the inmates do most of the work on those fires.
That's what people, and I gotta say this, that's what a lot of people don't realize about the wildfires we have in California, is that some of the frontline people who are there doing most of the work are the inmate firefighters.
Yeah.
You guys don't get a lot of credit because you're out there, you're not really getting, I think you might be getting paid now. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Very little.
Okay, well, officially they're getting paid now, but really it's nothing. You're out there because you're making an impact. You're making a difference. And I'm guessing that you all share the same mindset of, we have a purpose now. We're out here literally saving people's lives, literally saving people's homes. And we do it because we enjoy it, because we have a purpose. We're not looking to get, praises from everybody else in society, but we have a purpose. We have sort of a calling now. Is that sort of the mindset that you guys had?
Yeah, for sure.
That's awesome.
And also, it's there's a lot more perks when you're at a fire camp as opposed to on a prison yard.
No,
right?
yeah.
And there's a lot less drama too, right? Although the prison gang politics are not really happening in a fire camp, right? People are there trying to go home, right? Most of the people at a fire camp, I just want to go home. That's it. I'm just here to do my part and go home, right? And that's where I was, right? And I thought I was going to just do my time there, be a firefighter, learn some skill sets, and then go home. Mm-hmm. And then in 2013, my mom died. Right? And throughout this whole time that I've been incarcerated, she had been my backbone. She had been the only person writing me consistently. She had been the only person sending me money consistently. She had been the only person coming to visit me. Right? Like, she was the only one that actually showed that she cared during my time incarcerated. Like, my brother sent me letters and he couldn't visit me because he had gotten in some trouble himself. But she was consistent. And in 2013, she died. And once again, I had done a bunch of college classes, and I had been worked on my physical, conditioning, and I was strong, and I was fit, and I was ripped, and I was doing, but I hadn't worked on my emotional state. I hadn't worked on that scared, broken little child. And so when my mom died, I pretty much didn't know how to respond or how to take that. And I pretty much gave up on life at that time. I pretty much stopped caring. I pretty much did not care if I was making a difference in the world. I was angry. I got in a bunch of fights. I started using drugs. There's a lot of drugs in prison. I don't know if people realize that, but someone once told me it's easy to get clean in prison, and I was like, that wasn't my story, right? There was just, especially at fire camps, it was just flooded, right? The places I was at, and I just stopped caring, and I ended up getting kicked out of 4 different fire camps, and eventually they're just like, you can't be here no more. And they shipped me out to San Quentin State Prison right here in the Bay Area, right? And they shipped me there, and I got there, and I had a decision to make. Do I wanted to? Because here's the thing about San Quentin, I don't think a lot of people realize. San Quentin has the largest population of people doing life, right? So San Quentin has so many people that have been in prison for 20, 30, 40, even 50 years, right? That are doing life sentences that potentially may never get out, or some of them are trying to get out. And so I got to San Quentin, and San Quentin has a lot of programs, anger management classes, drug programs, parenting classes, all kinds of stuff, right? All kinds of opportunities for change. But when I got there, I wasn't ready to change yet, right? And so I chose to continue trying to heal myself through drugs, through criminal activity, right? Fighting people, just doing things like I just didn't care about life no more. I'd given up on life, Mike. I just
really
flat out
fast.
given up.
That's an important thing right there, because you basically had all these resources thrown at you. Like, hey, we can help you get clean. We can help you find a purpose. We can help you work on your anger. It's all here, right there, available to you. So it wasn't that the resources to make you a better person weren't there. You specifically were not ready to accept them.
Yes.
So it's not so much a matter of the more we just throw at you, the more it's just going to sink in. If the person's not ready to accept them, it's almost like it doesn't really matter, that we have to fix you as a person first before you can get into all the resources. I mean, it's an important point, because slight sidetrack here. We would talk about this with the whole homeless issue around here. The more resources that we throw, the more they're just going to accept it. It's not always the case. Some will, but some people just aren't ready to yet.
Yeah.
And it's how do we get through to that person to say, how can we help to get you ready to accept all this all these resources that you have available to you here. So I just want to bring out that important point because I'm glad that you said that. But continue on. So now you're like, okay, I'm not ready for this. I go back to what I know, satisfies the pain.
Yeah, I wouldn't say satisfied. Maybe numbs the pain.
Numbs the pain, better
right?
word.
Yeah. And so I went back to what I know, right? And I went back to just trying to kill myself, basically, through drugs, through alcohol, through fighting, participating in criminal activity. So August 1st, 2017, I was supposed to get out, right? Mm-hmm. And so the way the prison system works is if you get in trouble in prison, you don't get out on your release date. You stay longer, right?
Yeah.
And so August 1st, 2017, I was supposed to get out, and I wasn't getting out. In fact, I had another year and a half to go from then. So I had accumulated an extra year and a half in there because I didn't know how to behave. I didn't know how to deal with my emotions, and I didn't know how to stop acting out, And I didn't care either. That was like the hardest thing. Like, I just didn't care. It's like, all right, whatever. Oh, I can't go home. Whatever. I don't care. Another day. I'd hardened myself to even the idea of wanting to be free. And at that point, it's like being incarcerated was easy, right? It wasn't a hard thing no more. A lot of times I think the belief system is that, when you send people to prison, they learn because it's hard on them and tough. But really what it does is it hardens people's souls so they don't care no more. And then it becomes an easy thing to deal with. And sometimes when people that have been incarcerated for long periods of time, it's easier to be locked up than it is to be free. Right? I know a lot of people, including myself, that have struggled out here in the real world because it's easier in there at times.
Yes.
And so what happened was my release date went by, and there was like a lot of people in my dorm that were like taking like psychiatric medication, and I thought that maybe if I bought their pills from them and like snorted them, it would like help me, fix me. I don't know, this weird twisted thought process I had at the time. But it didn't work. And I was in a fog for about 3 weeks. And when I kind of came out of that fog, something sparked in me. And I was like, I'm done with this. This is over. I'm done. I can't do this no more. Right. And I remember August 30th, 2017. Right. So almost a month later after my release date, there's this guy, right? And I talk about him every time I talk about my story. Anytime I talk about him every time. He's a good friend of mine. His name's Fernando, right? And, for a long time, I didn't like Fernando, right? I didn't like Fernando because Fernando went to church. Fernando went to school. Fernando took vocation classes. Fernando didn't use drugs, right? And Fernando would sit in his bunk and watch movies and read books and just mind his own business, do his college work. And I hated Fernando because I was jealous of Fernando.
Jealous of Fernando.
I was jealous of him. And I didn't think I was jealous at the time, but now I've done a lot of work on myself, and I realized I was jealous of him because that man was going to get out of prison and never come back.
But what did you think about it then? Just, I hated him because he was doing everything
He was
right?
a square. We're in prison. That's not what you do in prison. That's not that's not what I did in prison, And so like, for me, it was like, I can't mess with him because he's not doing what I'm doing, right? But now that I've done work, I realized that I was jealous of Fernando, right? Deep down, I was jealous of him because, like, I knew he was going to get out and never come back, and I was destined to either spend the rest of my life in prison or die in the streets, right? That was just the two options I had, right? And I went up to him August 30th, and I said, hey, man, I need help, right? And he knew I didn't like him. I made it very obvious that I didn't like him. I was not nice to him, right? And he forgiven me for that, right? This is like one of the first times I felt someone truly cared about me, right? No matter what mistakes I had made, no matter what I had done in the world, like, he truly cared about me. And the only other time I felt that way was with my mom, right? Mm-hmm. And she was gone, right? So now Fernando, like, yeah, man, I got you, right? And I didn't deserve that. The reality of it is I didn't deserve for him to say, I got you. Let me help you. Let me help you, Paul. Right? I didn't deserve that. Right? But he did. And he was like, I go to this NA meeting tonight. Let's go. And he took me with him to the NA meeting. And August 30th, 2017. I haven't picked up a drug or any alcohol since then, right? And over 5 years clean and sober now, you know?
That's incredible. There was one point I wanted to get out to.
Yeah, please do.
What was that sort of crack in the armor that made you say, I'm going to take that step? Like, was it just, okay, no one's watching. Okay, I'll just humor him a little bit. What was it that made you take that first step to say, you know what, Fernando, I don't like you, but I'm just going to go with this, see what happens?
Honestly, I don't know. I've been asked that so many questions, and I don't know what changed at that moment. Like something happened, right? And the reality of it was my release date passed me by. I was high on all these psych meds and other mind-altering substances for about 3 weeks. I was in a fog. I don't remember the month of August in 2017. I just remember walking up to Fernando and asking for help, right? And honestly, I'd stopped using drugs a few days before that, but I don't even consider that a clean date because I was still in a fog. And it's like I just woke up one morning and I was like, I'm done. This is just not working for me.
That is crazy. And then from that one step there, it sets you on the path where pretty much your life has just been going up ever since. And you have had no urges to go back to what it was substance-wise that sort of numbed everything.
Oh, I've had urges, for sure.
How do you, what do you say to yourself that gets you away from that?
I always remind myself where I came from. I play the tape, right? We have this saying called play the tape, right? And I sit there like, all right. So like I've never had like urges to like go out and do like some hard drugs, but drinking has been an urge before, or smoking some weed has been an urge before. Like I'm having a rough time right now, and like just like a beer would be nice, or it's a hot day and a nice cold beer would be nice. But then I remember like I've tried that before. What happens? One beer, then it's a 40, then it's some Hennessy. Then I'm like, all right, I want to be a drug kingpin, and that doesn't work for me. And then I'm running around with guns and doing stupid stuff that I shouldn't be doing.
Do you believe in the idea that whether it's alcohol or weed is a gateway drug? Some people go back and forth. Does it really lead you to all these other things, or what? Or is it more up here that leads you going down the path?
I think it can be for certain people, right? I know people that can drink on a Friday night and not drink for 2 more weeks. It's not my story. I know people that can smoke some weed at a party on a Saturday and then never smoke weed again. I know people that can eat some THC gummies to help them sleep, and then that's it. So like I think it's different for everybody. I know that for myself, I don't really have anyone in my phone book on my phone that does drugs, right? I think my barber smokes weed, but other than that, like I don't have anyone in my phone that you can even lead me to that next destination,
Do you spend a lot of time, because you're from the East Bay, do you spend a lot of time ever going through Oakland or San Francisco or any of the bigger cities where you see a lot of the homeless population, you see a lot of the guys who are struggling with addiction on the streets? Like, do you see that, or you just kind of stay away from the area?
I kind of know because realistically I have like a couple spots I go to, and that's all I go to.
Okay. So let's say in theory you were walking down, let's say you ended up walking through the Tenderloin now, and regardless of you specifically getting any urges, when you see the people out there that you can tell are struggling, in your mind, do you think, is there anything that I can do to say to them to help them? Or do you think it's like they have to find their own path and it's better if I don't try to intervene? How would your mind process that if you see someone that looks like they're calling up for help?
So I think like when we're talking about like people in like a homeless encampment or something like that, a lot of them have to figure it out, sometimes, especially if they're currently on drugs, their minds are clouded to a point where they can't hear what others have to say anyways. I know people that do a lot of work with the homeless. I know people that run organizations where they're out there in the front lines of the Tenderloins and areas of that, nature, that go out there and they just sit there with these people and have conversations with them and let them know that it's possible to change. Not everyone's ready, right? Just like when I was incarcerated, there were people telling me I could change and I wasn't ready, and it's so everyone has to find their what clicks for them to make that change.
It's almost like if you're in a situation where everybody around you is doing the same thing, you have to sort of build them up and say, let's start bringing some positivity to their area. And I know that gets people I'm gonna say it gets people upset, but that's sort of the big, challenge we have around here. It's you have the law enforcement side that says you're doing something wrong and we need to take you to jail. Then you have the other side of it that says they're struggling, they're victims, we need to give them all the resources that we can. And the reality is it's probably somewhere in the middle that we need to be in. Give people all the resources that they can to make themselves better. But at some point, if I give it to you, and you're not taking it, now we have to get into more of the enforcement side because it's not clicking for you. It's interesting, and I want to get into your personal training story now because this is going to be really good over here. I sort of want to close the loop on your story here. I'm sure we'll get back into it in many pieces as we continue going forward. But if you think about giving back to the challenged youth now, because I know you're spending time with some people. You were just up there yesterday, correct?
Friday, yes.
At a fire camp.
Yes.
When you speak to them about your story, what's the reception? How you kind of get a feel for the room? What's the reception that you're getting? Are people taking it in? Are they like, this guy doesn't know what I'm going through, so screw him? Or do you think that there's something else that we could do better to help them?
So I think that, so I can just talk about my experience on a Friday night, right? On a Friday night, I drove to a juvenile fire camp in Pine Grove, which is outside of Stockton. There's about 30 guys there, most of them between the ages of 15 and 25. Right, because it's a juvenile fire camp, but I think a lot of people don't realize, even as a juvenile, if you get sentenced like juvenile life, they can hold you till you're 25, right? So there's people that are in juvenile facilities that are over 18 still.
Really?
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing for me is when I went to speak to them. Of course, they have their guards and different people in there, their counselors. One of their counselors is a good friend of mine. She brought me in, right, and. She had been telling them ahead of time that I was coming. And I think I had their attention because I could relate to them in so many different ways, right? So it wasn't like, oh, I'm some random guy that went to school for drug abuse counseling and I'm telling you why drugs are bad. Like, no, I was a juvenile offender. I was an inmate firefighter, right? And now I'm doing positive, productive things in an area that interests them. Right, because fitness is a thing that people love while incarcerated, and these kids loved it, right? And so I was able to stand in front of them and tell my story, right? And I told them my story about Fernando, right? And I told them my story about how from the moment I met with Fernando, about how I latched onto him and everything he was doing, right? Because one thing I did during that last, is I latched onto every program and every opportunity I can get my hands on, right? And so I explained to this youth the same thing, right? I did the anger management. I did the substance abuse classes. Bro, I even did the parenting classes. And at the time, I didn't have no kids, right? I took parenting classes.
That's awesome.
And I didn't have no kids. I didn't even plan on having no kids. Like, I have a girlfriend now with 2 beautiful little boys that I get to be a part of their life.
That's awesome.
Yeah, like I did a parenting class. I did yoga, right? And so I explained to the youth on Friday, I said, look, man, there's a lot of resources and opportunities. And even if they don't directly relate to what you're going through right now, I would say take advantage of them, right? And so the greatest thing was I was able to relate to them, right? And I explained to them, I said, hey, look, if one of you, I just need one of you guys to walk out of this room today and decide you don't want to live like this anymore. And tonight was successful. I drove 2.5 hours to get there. I spent an hour and a half with them, and I drove 2 hours back. So 4.5 hours of driving in order to speak to them for 90 minutes.
And you weren't getting paid for this?
I was not getting paid for this.
You were not looking for recognition? You're doing this because you have a deeper purpose to give back to somebody or a group of kids who were going through pretty much a similar thing that you were at their age. And you were able to find a way to get control back in your life, whereas at the time, they did not have it.
Yep.
And this is how I can give back to them to say, you can pull yourself out of what seems to be an unachievable thing, rock bottom, that you can actually get yourself out of there. What was the reception like? When you walked away from that one specifically, how did you feel about how everybody took it?
I felt great. I felt like I really got to them, right?
That's awesome.
They asked a lot of really good questions, right? Which showed me that they were paying attention, right? Like after I gave them my story, I told them, as much as information and valuable ideas or suggestions I could. And then we opened it up for like a Q&A, and they asked me a lot of really good questions, right? And they really asked me they asked me a lot of fitness questions, of course, right?
I believe you.
But they also asked me a lot of things about like, how do I deal with negative thoughts when they come up, right? How do I deal with my anger nowadays? How do I deal with there's one guy, he'd been incarcerated for a while. He's been 8 years. He's been in there. He came in at 15 years old, right? So imagine being 15 years old and being told, so he has juvenile life, so he doesn't get out till he's 25. So at 15, he's got 10 years of prison to do, or of incarceration to do at 15, right? Most people are nervous about going to their first day of high school at 15, and here he is looking at a decade incarcerated, right? And he asked me, he said, I've been here for 8 years. I got a couple years left. And I'm just wondering, like, how did you adjust to the world when you got out?
That's a very educated question for someone his age to ask. How do you adjust to the world? And he's 15. Wow.
Well, no, he was 15 when he was incarcerated.
He's 25.
23 now.
Okay, 23.
23 now, yeah. 22, 23, because he's been about 8 years, right? But yeah, so he's, he said he's still got a few years left, but he wants to know, like, when he gets out, like, how do you adjust? How do you go from this life? And he's been in there as a kid. Yeah. So he doesn't even know what high school is. Right? He doesn't even know, like, I don't even know if he's ever, like, had a girlfriend. Like, these are the things that, like, many people take for granted and don't even realize, like, 15 years old, he's never legally been able to even have a driver's license. I'm not sure he's ever driven a car, but, like, legally, no, So it was awesome to be able to, like, and that's why I go back and say that what I have been through, I wouldn't go back and change that, right? Because now I get to stand in front of a group of kids and say, hey, guess what? I'm not one of your counselors that went to school for this. I'm not one of your guards or COs that went to school for this, that are telling you. I mean, I'm sure they care about you and they want you to change, but it's hard to relate to someone that's never been incarcerated or never had drug addiction or never been beaten up by their parent or by another person or have never been an inmate firefighter even, right? Mm-hmm. And here I am in front of them saying, hey, everything you've been through, I've been there. Wow. And guess what? I survived it. And here I am today to show you that you can change it now or you can change it later, but change is possible.
It definitely is. Now, if someone's listening who's on the younger side, maybe they're in their early 20s and they're in a similar spot, a lot of, especially guys who want the step-by-step stuff here, what would you tell them if somebody who's in a position, let's say they grew up in a bad neighborhood and they may have done some dumb stuff, but they haven't, really done that thing that takes them straight to prison now. What would be your advice to tell people, here's where you probably need to start at? Is it get away from the friends that you may be associated with, get into school? How would you start to kind of get them on the right path when they haven't hit rock bottom yet?
So, there's a saying that I hear all the time. If you're in a room full of millionaires, you're going to be a millionaire. So if you're in a room full of convicts, you're going to be a convict. So just because you ain't been to prison yet, if you're hanging out with a bunch of people that have been to prison, you're on your way to prison, right? So if you're hanging out with a bunch of people that are successful, that are owning businesses, owning houses, that are doing positive things, then that's what you can be as well. So latch onto the people that are doing the things you want to do, right? So like, for example, I didn't think, it's sad because I had this mentality when I was younger that I wanted to go to prison, right? There was like this status that comes with being someone that went to prison. Like, oh, this guy went to prison. He did prison time. Ooh, he's tough. Like, and now I look at that like that's ridiculous, and I've ran into younger population that they're surrounded by people that have been incarcerated before. And they're like, I don't want to go to jail. I don't want to go to prison. That doesn't sound like fun to me, but that's all I know. That's all I see around me, Yeah. And so I would definitely say latching on to people that are doing the things that you actually want to do or have in your life.
Right. Now that sounds like it's the obvious answer that we tell them, but if you're a youth, let's say you grow up in East Oakland, and I know I don't want to be around this crowd here because they're bringing me down. I know I need to be around a better, more positive thinking crowd. How do you even take that first step? Like, especially if you try to get on the bus to go to like, I don't know, an area where, it's, maybe you go to a different part of town where the streets are cleaner, there's businesses, maybe you can get a job over there. Like, how do you do that and not like worry about the criticism that you're probably going to get from the guys that you're growing up with saying, where are you going? Does it seem like maybe you have to sort of, hide the fact that you're trying to do better in the world to get away from that crowd? And I see that being a challenge with a lot of youth is that some of them know I need to do better, but I can't just, upend the boys that I have now. Or if I go over there, A, I don't know where to go. And B, are they going to accept me over there? And then C, am I going to get into more trouble over here because now they think I'm trying to get out of the hole that we're in. They're going to try to bring me down with it. It seems like that's one of the bigger challenges with a lot of youth who want to do better for themselves. How would you tell someone like that who's in that spot now, this is what you got to do?
So personally, I would connect them with someone I know that's doing better things, right? So I know quite a few people that are, they do youth outreach, they do work with the youth, right? And they've been incarcerated, and they've been, from the streets of Oakland or different areas of the Bay Area. And so they can connect. Like, oh yeah, I know your dad, or I know your uncle, or I did time with your grandpa, or whatever that might be, right?
Yeah.
And can kind of connect with them. Like, I'm from your neighborhood, but guess what? You don't have to go down the route I went down, and so they'd help. There's a lot of, I know some people that do that stuff out in this area, in the Oakland area,
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's hard. It's hard, especially when people are not growing up with the right positive mentors or influences,
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why I think it's important for people like myself to give back and share my story as much as I can, right? So
Right.
I even I did a post on my social media about a month ago, and was like, hey, look, like, this is something that's important to me. The youth, speaking to the youth, like, give me some opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
Of course I'd like to get paid for it, but if you're, there's no access at me getting paid for it, fine, whatever. I want to make a difference, and so like, I've had a few people reach out to me since then and say, hey, I might have an opportunity for you to do some speaking. I've talked to some people about going into like juvenile halls and things like that. Like, how can I relate, But I think it needs to be, it's easier to relate to someone when you look like them or when you've been through similar situations as them.
Now, if you're being honest with yourself here, if you think back to your time in San Jose as like a teenager, like 17, 18, whatnot, knowing now that's what you probably should do. But if somebody came to you and said, hey, Paul, I got an opportunity for you to have a part-time job on the other side of town, you'll make a little bit of money and you'll stay out of trouble. Do you think you were ready at the time to accept that if that opportunity was presented to you?
No, I wasn't.
So that's the thing that I'm trying to get is like, so if you're not ready, what could we have done going back to make you say, let's get you out of here? Would it have to be somebody literally driving you from point A to point B? Would it be you having to move from where you're at now to a different neighborhood? What could it be that we can make that change back then? I know it's not an easy question to answer.
That's a hard question.
But that's definitely one of the ones that I can see people hear. Sort of the feedback that I've gotten from similar stories as you is, it's great to say that, but you don't know my situation. Like, how am I going to get from where I'm at now to there? And especially if you say yourself, you weren't even ready at the time. Like, what could we do to sort of just draw them out of there? So even though you say you're not ready, now we're going to force you into better spots.
So you can't really force anybody into a better spot either. That's what makes it hard, right? I mean,
It does, yeah.
I was literally taken from my home and put into a boys' home because the system thought that would fix me, right? Let me take you out of the environment you're in because you can't seem to stay out of trouble in that environment and put you in this other environment. And I lived in a nice house in the suburbs, in like the kind of like countryside. There was like horses nearby, and like, like there was nothing going on where that house was at. But yeah, you have a bunch of troubled youth from all over the Bay Area in this house just fighting each other because there's nowhere else to fight people,
Yeah. And so it's a similar upbringing that's broken home, or dad's not around, or dad's in jail, and you're sort of craving that positive male role model at that age, but he's just not around. So what do? I look for the bigger kids who maybe, I can sort of be a part of, and they're going to protect me / I can look cool by being with them. That's not like a similar mindset.
Yeah.
So it does kind of come down to, when we talk about two parents and saying the parents have to be the ones responsible for it. And yeah, it's a challenge. And, it's easy for me to say, this is what you can do if you're a youth to kind of get you on the right path. But, without having been in that same situation as them, I can never relate to what you probably saw every day and what it does to your mindset. It's a lot. But I'm hoping that somebody who hears this can see your story and how you had to go through a lot, not as much as some other people who did like real violence or they really hurt somebody, but you went through a lot. You went through the fire camps, and you're still able to get out of that. And something clicked with you that one day with Fernando that pulled you out of what was going to be a bigger spiral and allowed you to get out of that. So it's very impactful.
And I think that sometimes just continuously planting the seed, right?
That's a good one.
So maybe that first person that talks to that youth doesn't get to them. and then the second person, and then a third person, and then a fourth person. And eventually one day they're like, dang, I had like 10 people over the last 2 years tell me that there's a different way. Let me see if one of those, I just need one of those guys to help me, you know? And I think that's why it's important, you know, for people like myself and yourself as well. And for us I think it's important for individuals that in our age group, right, to continuously try to reach out to the youth and try to make a difference in everyone's life and just plant those seeds, right? Just a little bit at a time, right? Because when I look back on it, like my mom was constantly planting seeds, and different people have planted seeds throughout my life. Even Fernando's activities and actions planted a seed within me. And eventually, you know, that seed was watered and it started to grow, right? It was not until I was ready, but there was still that seed planted. So I feel that the more seeds we plant in the community, that there is an opportunity to change or make a difference. Eventually, you know, and like I said, when I spoke at the fire camp on Friday, you know, there's like 30 guys there. I said, I just need one of you guys to believe me. That's it. And it was a successful night, you know? And even if not even one of them believed me, but it planted a seed, and it might take 4 more years for them to figure it out. If it's 4 years instead of 20 years, then we saved 16 years of trauma, and that worked, you know?
Maybe that's it. You know, you're right. Like you're planting a seed now, and it may go nowhere. But the third guy to do it may be the one that gets that guy to say, all right, you know, I've been hearing this, and now that's the one that got me out of it. So Fernando might have been the last seed of the many, like you said, that were planted for you going back years. And it just took that one more to put to get over the hump and say, now I'm ready to do it. Very impactful. But now I want to get to the really fun stuff now, which is your business.
Yeah.
So this is exciting because you have your own personal training business. Now, first of all, after you got out, how did you even think to start this business? Because I'm pretty sure you didn't know, okay, how do you start a business? Where do I go to? Who do I go? How did you even get from getting out of prison there to now, I'm going to start my own business?
So just to rewind a little bit back to when I was still incarcerated, right? So my last year, right, I started hanging out with Fernando. I started taking a bunch of classes, and I started working on myself, right? And I started learning who I was, right? I started to love myself. I started to figure out who Paul truly was. And I started to see like, hey, maybe I could be a productive member of society, right? Mm-hmm. And so I started dealing with some trauma. I started healing. And as I started to heal, I started to say, hey, there's actually some things that are good about me. There's actually some things that I could utilize to be successful. And eventually what I did is I decided I was one of these mini classes I was taking in prison. One of them was an entrepreneurship class, right?
That's awesome right there that they had that available to you.
Yeah, so I took this class, and one of the suggestions they made, they said, get a piece of paper and draw a line down the middle. On the left, write everything you're good at. And on the right, write everything you enjoy doing. Fitness and helping people kind of coincided right there. So I said, all right, cool. I'm going to get out and be a personal trainer. I just made a decision. That's what I'll do when I get out. I have what do I have to lose? It's either that or be a drug kingpin, and I know that doesn't work for me.
Doesn't work, yeah.
Yeah, I've tried that before, you know? Cool. Personal trainer it is. So I got a book from the library about how to write a business plan, and I wrote a business plan, right? And so I get out. I want to talk about how I got to Hayward, right? So I'm from San Jose, and in California, when you get incarcerated, you're supposed to go back to where you committed your crime, right? They send you back to where you got incarcerated at, right? So I was supposed to go back to San Jose. Mind you, I was struggling with drugs throughout my time in incarceration, so I got caught with drugs at one point. So when it's time for me to get out, they say, hey, Mr. Casey, we see that you have a drug problem. Do you want to go to a drug program? And I said, yes, I do. Right? Because at that point, I was like, I need a foundation when I get out. Because if you just let me go to my own, I don't know what I would do. So I go to this program, right? And, well, they tell me there's no beds open in San Jose. We can send you to Hayward. I said, okay, cool, I'll go to Hayward. So they send me this program in Hayward. So now it's crazy, the way full circle. First time I tried to get clean and sober, when I was 18 years old, I lived in Hayward. Well, the second time, now when I got out, in Hayward, right? So I go to Hayward, and what I ended up doing was I went to this 90-day program, and the first 30 days, I don't even have a cell phone, right? So I'm there, and I just start making a plan. I start asking questions, and I tell the staff there, like, hey, I want to become a personal trainer. Can you help me? And they're like, yeah, here's a computer. Look it up. So I found out about Google. You can find anything on Google, right?
Yep.
Google is like, I got to tell you, if the audience hears anything I have to say, you can learn anything on Google. It's free resources. Utilize it, right? So I Googled how to become a personal trainer. And I found a couple like certifications, and I wrote it down, and I said, all right, cool. So I set this goal, become a personal trainer, and I just started whittling away at that goal. Right? And step by step, I did these small things that would take me to adjust to society. I got a driver's license, and then eventually I graduated from that program, and I went to a sober living environment, a halfway house, and I got a job at a warehouse, and I worked my way through the warehouse. I hated that job. It was horrible. Worst thing I ever did in my life. Right?
Warehouse job, huh?
Oh, it was horrible, man. It was a packaging company, so I'd look at boxes for hours.
Oh, man.
Right? It was so tedious, like thousands of boxes, like looking for like discrepancies in the marking or like,
Really fast, because I want to set the tone here,
Yeah.
is that this whole time, you already have a purpose that you want to be a personal trainer, and you're committed to that.
Yeah.
So you decided, this is where I want to be at. What do I have to do to get there?
Yeah.
I got to take this job at the warehouse. Why am I doing this job that I don't like? Well, I need the money so I can go and get my program started.
Yeah.
That's a big change, because some people may say, well, I would want to do X job because it pays well. But then if they don't have the right motivation why they want to do it, and you tell them, here's all the steps you have to take, they might get through a few of the steps and say, that's a lot of work. I don't really want to go through that. But you have a purpose in mind. You know what you want to do. You know you're good at fitness, training, and you want to help people. This is the end goal here, or this is where I'm shooting for here. What do I have to take to get there? So the mindset is different. The mindset is, I have to do all these steps to get to where I want to be at. It's incredible. So I just want to sort of set that tone for everybody. That's not like working at a warehouse in and of itself that you don't like, specifically race to personal training, but it's helping you build the foundation to what you need to get to. It's awesome. Continue on.
Yeah. So I worked at that warehouse for a while. I started saving up money. And then a good friend of mine was like, hey, I bounce in clubs on the weekends. Do you want to come make some more money? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we started coming up here to San Francisco and bouncing in some clubs up here. Right. So we come up here on a Friday night, and I'd bounce a club and I'd get paid cash at the end of the night. So I was like, cool. I started making some good money doing that, on top of the warehouse job. And eventually I left the warehouse job and I went to school full time. Right. So I went to Chabot College in Hayward.
Alma mater.
Yeah. That's where you went.
I did my time there. Yes.
Yeah. Nice. So I went to Chabot, and I got involved with this program called the RISE program at Chabot, and they work with previously incarcerated students. And I latched onto them, and I started going to school full time and bouncing clubs on the weekend. And eventually I got another, a buddy of mine that I grew up with, had changed his ways and started a security company. And so he saw me one time with my little walkie-talkie that I was bouncing clubs with. I was posting it on Facebook, and he's like, hey, man, I own a security company. Do you want a job? And so I was like, yeah, I could do that. So I got a job doing security. It didn't last super long because of my past, right? So basically what happened is he paid for me to get my guard card. I took the class, passed the class. I was under review, and he let me work while I was under review, right? Because legally he could do that. And eventually they denied my guard card because of my past. But I knew I figured that was going to come, right? And I had a goal in mind. Hey, save money. So I lived sparingly. I didn't spend my money on stupid things, and I just slowly started saving up money.
And you had an excuse there to say, oh, the system's out to get me. And you didn't let that bother you.
Nope.
That's very impressive. Continue on there.
I let that bother me for too long.
Yeah.
So what I did was I was going to school. And here's one thing, that day that I asked Fernando for help, right, it changed something in my brain that was programmed in my brain a long time ago, that men don't ask for help.
Oh, yeah.
Right? I was always in this thought process that men don't ask for help, right?
Yeah, that's fortunately some that still is prevalent a lot, is that I can do it on my own. I don't need anybody. Yeah, some that we had to work through.
Yeah, well, I mean, and there's no such thing. I don't believe in self-made. It's nothing self-made. You got to get help somewhere, right? So I got used to asking for help, right? And so here I am. I'm in a statistics class. I'm struggling. Statistics is not fun, not easy, right? And I see this kid in there, right? And he's young and he's smart. He's asking and answering questions, and I'm like asking questions because I'm not willing to fail this class. And so I go up to him after class. I'm like, hey, man, I need a study partner. Will you help me? I don't want you to do my homework. I just want your help. Like, we can meet up, we can study, we can do homework together. Let me know. He's like, yeah, cool. So we exchange numbers. We start meeting up and studying. I get to know him. And I find out he works for this. At the same time, I'm working on my personal training certification. I had paid for this online certification from one of my paychecks, and I'm working on this. I'm whittling it away while I'm doing this security job, and I'm going to school, and I'm just like slowly getting closer and closer to my goal, right? And he tells me, he goes, hey, I work for this company called Orange Theory. Have you ever heard of Orange Theory, Mike?
Heard that.
Yeah, so Orange Theory's all over the place, man. Right?
Everywhere, man. You have no idea. It's popping up every place. Anyway, go ahead.
So he's like, I work for this company called Orange Theory. It's a group fitness. Can you put me in touch with someone there? And he's like, yeah, I'll give you the phone number, right? So you're going to love this story, right? Funny story. So he texts me the phone number and spells, her name is Jamie, okay? Mm-hmm. But spells it Jaime. Now, I grew up in San Jose, so that says Jaime to me, right?
Yeah.
So I text Jamie, excuse me, sir, right? Definitely not a sir, right?
Yeah.
Text her, and I was like, hey, my name is Paul. I'm interested in, I'm working on my certification. I'm interested in talking to you about a job at Orange Theory. So a couple days go by, no answer, and she reaches out to me, and she goes, first off, I'm not a sir. I was like, oh, man.
We're off to a good start.
Foot in my mouth already, right? But she's like, but yeah, I'd like to get to know you and have a conversation. So we set up a time to get on a phone call. And, at this time, I told you before I didn't love myself. I started to love myself. I started accepting myself. I started, I done so much work on myself to realize that my mistakes don't make who I am today. And if I want to be successful in the world, I need to accept those mistakes. I need to accept my assets and my liabilities. And I need to move forward with them. Right. Mm-hmm. And so I had made so many changes in my life that when I got on this phone call with Jamie, she said, tell me about Paul, and I want you to be transparent. I was transparent. I said, look, I just did 10 years in prison for assaulting someone with a firearm. Right. I've been clean off of drugs. I haven't committed crimes. I'm working on my certification. And I promise you, if you give me an opportunity to work for you, I'll be the best coach you've ever had. I'll be your best employee. Just give me an opportunity. That's all I want is one opportunity. And she said, okay. And you know what? And she's one of my best friends to this day, right? Like, I love this woman so much, right? And so she gave me a chance, I went and met her. I took an Orange Theory class. I loved it, right? And she's like, all right, cool. So I'm going to give you 10 classes. And she's like, I want to see how fast you do these classes and how much you show up. I showed up almost every single day. It took me 12 days to complete 10 classes. Right? Only missed a couple classes because I had to work.
Like classes you were instructing or classes you took?
I was taking.
You were taking.
Right? So she gave me these 10 classes that I could go do. Because she basically said, she's like, I don't want you to work for me if you don't like the product we're selling.
That's a good mindset to have.
Yeah. So I took the classes. I would go take a class, and then I'd stick around after the class and ask her questions and follow her around. She let me stay in the class while she coached the next class, and I just watch what she did, and I mimic her,
Yeah.
Because I was like, this is my in. Right? Like, in my mindset, this is my only chance right here to get into the fitness industry, right? Because I had all these books in my head, I have all these things stacked against me, right? There's so many reasons why she should have told me to F off, right? Mm-hmm. So many reasons. Like, I'm a felon. I'm a violent felon. I'm covered in tattoos. I have a history of drug abuse. Like, there's so many reasons why she could have been like, no, I don't think you're a good fit for this position. But she gave me a chance, right? Mm-hmm. And so I lived up to my word, right? I lived up to my word, and I showed up, and she was like, hey, we're opening a new facility in Castro Valley, and if you finish your certification, I'll put you in for the coach's training. The coach's training was on a Monday, and I finished my certification by Friday.
Look at that.
I was like, I knuckled down. I even put a post on Facebook. Hey, family, friends, I'm not responding to text messages, phone calls, or emails. Like, I'm okay. I'm good, but I got something I got to handle. And I hid my phone and I got to work. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so I got that done. I got certified as a personal trainer, and I went through the coach's training and I got the job.
That's awesome.
And yeah, man, that was my first step into the fitness industry, right? And I loved it. I loved Orange Theory. It was great. And I worked for them for almost 3 years, or for over 3 years actually, right? About a year and a half in, the pandemic hit, the world shut down. Mm-hmm. Right. And I had worked so hard for Orange Theory that they kept me on during the pandemic. Right. They kept me on. I did phone calls. I was just call people hey, it's Coach Paul. How are you doing? I'd make phone calls for them. We ran Zoom classes. Right. So I ran classes on Zoom. And I've never been one to just twiddle my thumbs and do nothing. I don't sit still well. So I was like, all right, well, we're in the middle of a pandemic. I'm not working as many hours as I was. Mm-hmm. School's online. I should start my business. So I did exactly that.
Look at that.
I established an LLC, and I was living in Pleasanton, taking care of my aunt at the time, and there was a park right around the corner, and I started going on Facebook and Instagram, hey, who wants to come take a fitness class at the park? And I started doing classes, and people hired me one-on-one, and I just started training people. I bought a kettlebell, I bought a slam ball, and I bought some resistance bands. Then I bought some dumbbells. And then I bought, I started like getting equipment, and I filled my trunk full of equipment. You talked about a Honda Civic earlier. I have a Honda Accord, right? Filled my trunk full of equipment, and I would just start training people at parks. And it slowly progressed from there.
Look at that. And at the base of this, which is what I want everybody to understand, is that you had already made the mindset shift early on that this is what you wanted to do. You had several opportunities to say, oh, well, the world's against me, so I can easily fall off the rails, and you didn't do it. You kept pushing through. At a time, especially in the pandemic, when a lot of people were saying, oh, well, I guess I can't work, so I'm just going to sit back, whatever. And you said, no, I'm going to go find a way to make this and take this and make it my own, make my own business. How can I create classes? There's a demand for that. Go into parks or go into wherever it is that you would go to have classes outdoors, spacing them out, whatever it is for the whole 6-foot thing.
Yeah.
And then making people come in and enjoy in a class, which is what so many people wanted to do. And that's just so amazing how you were still doing that at a time when you could have easily said, nah, it's too hard, not for me or whatever, or somebody's out to get me. That is awesome. So how did it, and you established an LLC, which is very important. Most people don't think about that. Like, to do things the right way, you have to make sure you cross your T's and dot your I's. So part of doing that is establishing your LLC.
Yeah.
You got all the certifications. You went to Orange Theory. You got the experience and the training. You said you want to go independent, and now you have an LLC to back that up. And now you're really taking full control of your life, which is something that I really appreciate and admire, that you're able to do all this stuff, considering what you've had in your background. Could have easily said, nope, not for me. And you went through it, and you're powering through it. That's awesome. So now you're at the position now in the pandemic. You're throwing outdoor classes. What's the next step in your business evolution?
So while I'm building my business, I'm still working for Orange Theory, right? So I'm basically doing both, right?
Zoom classes, and then you're also doing,
So we're doing Orange Theory Zoom classes. I started doing my own Zoom classes, and then I'm doing classes and one-on-one training at the park. And eventually I moved back to Hayward. And when I moved to Hayward, I moved in with a buddy of mine, and he had a squat rack and some barbells, and I had the few items I had bought. So we went together. We bought a big tent and put it in our backyard, and we built like a gym back there. Right? So I started bringing people to my house and training them in the backyard. All right, so I was either training people in my backyard or going to Orange Theory. And I had a couple clients. I went to their house and trained them at their house. I just started grinding. I was grinding, man. Started picking up momentum. Orange Theory ended up doing outdoor classes, so I would go run their classes for them and then go home and run my own training. Eventually, I moved again, continued with the backyard, ended up moving into my garage. Orange Theory opened back up, so now I'm doing both. I'm doing both. I get in a relationship with this amazing woman. So life is just amazing, right? Life is so good that I didn't even think this was all possible, right? And so I'm in this relationship with this woman. I'm working at Orange Theory. I'm running one-on-one training in my garage. And it's just I knew I had more in me, I think there's a lot of people would have been like, this is good right here. I'm cool right here. I ended up becoming the head coach at Orange Theory, right? Running their facility right there in Castro Valley. It was cool. It was a little too much admin work for me, right? I just wanted to train people.
Yeah, the other side of a business is all that paperwork.
Yeah, there's a lot of admin stuff on that position. It didn't really fit for me, right? And then trying to do that plus build my own business, I ended up stepping down from that head coach position. And after 3 years with Orange Theory, I had an opportunity to open my own facility, right? A good friend of mine, she owns a yoga studio in Castro Valley, and she was like, hey, we have an open spot that's being rented in our building that you might be interested in using for your gym. So I went and checked out that spot, and it didn't actually work out for me, but it sparked something inside of me, right? There was a moment where here's a professional, here's a business owner, here's an awesome member of society that runs a successful business in a nice area telling me I could open my own business in the same space as her. And I was like, this could be a thing. Maybe I don't just need to be training people in my garage. Maybe I could do something more, right? And so that space didn't work out for me, but it got this fire lit within me, I'm going to open my own spot. So I started finding all these for lease signs that I'd pull up and I'd call the number and hey, how much is this place? Right. And I ended up talking to this real estate agent, and I was like, hey, this is what I'm looking for. And he was like, oh, I got a spot that you might like. And he took me to the spot. I checked it out. I was like, this is going to be my spot. And so, I jumped through all the hurdles and I got my spot. It's been about 6 months I've been in there.
Wow.
Right?
That's awesome, man. And so, wow, you get your own spot now doing all that. And at the back of everything is the reason why you're even doing this, because you want to make an impact in people's lives. You want to be able to tell them that they can control their own body physically. This is what I do. This is important. Nothing's going to stand in my way, when easily the paperwork of going through the business LLC, the grind of trying to find a spot that's going to work for you and everything like that could have easily brought you down, and you said no, and you kept pushing through it. And that's somebody else who is out there who has a dream, whether it's personal training, maybe it's open up their own coffee shop or open up their own shipping business or whatever it is. Doesn't matter what you've been through. If you got the urge to actually go out there and do it, there are ways that you can actually do it. It's just a matter of you have to believe in yourself first. This is what I want to do. So how's the business going?
Yeah, no, business has been really good, right? So when I opened the spot about 6 months ago, I still tried to hold on to Orange Theory. It wasn't working. I was burning myself out. I got to a point where I was just burnt out. Right? And I remember you asked me earlier in this conversation if I ever have gotten tempted to use drugs and stuff. There's a few moments where I thought I needed to take a drink to take the edge off of the stress I had of trying to do too much, right? I was trying to live up to being a boyfriend, right? I was trying to live up to being the coach at Orange Theory that everyone loved. I was trying to live up to being an amazing personal trainer, trying to live up to be a business owner. A lot of people don't realize as a business owner, you don't get paid for half the stuff you do, right?
Yeah.
Everyone thinks I'm gonna start a business and make a bunch of money. No, you lose money for most of the time when you're starting a business.
Oh, yeah.
I'm, hours spent not getting paid for nothing, just in debt to build the business, but having so much faith in my dream and my goals that I'm willing to take that debt on, And so I got to a point where I was just burnt out. Right. And I got to a point where I wasn't enjoying what I was doing. Right. And I knew there was a purpose for me to be on this earth. I knew there's a purpose for me to be training people and helping people get healthy and changing some lives through fitness, nutrition, mindset, all these things that I'm doing with my clients. And I wasn't feeling that purpose. I wasn't feeling fulfilled. And I needed to take a step away from some things. Right. So I ended up having to leave Orange Theory. Right. I told them, I said, I got too much going on and I need to focus on me and my business. Right, my mental health was taking a hit, and I walked away from Orange Theory with my head held high, and I love my employer there. Everyone that I worked with at Orange Theory was amazing, and I just focused on my business, right? And so now I'm in my business 100%. I spend about 13 hours a day at my gym, right? There's moments when I don't work the whole 13 hours. I work out too, or sometimes in between clients, I go run errands, but my first client's at 6 a.m., and my last client's at 6 p.m.
Wow.
Right? So I have a couple clients in the morning. Actually, I just put a post out today that I have an open slot for 7 a.m. Monday through Friday because a few people finished their 12-week program. I got a buddy of mine just finished 12 weeks. His goal was to get under 300 pounds. He was 332 pounds. His goal was under 300 pounds. We got him to 297 at the end of our 12 weeks, right? So he lost 35 pounds in 12 weeks, right? So his time slot just opened up, right? So my goal is, to have a couple people in the morning, a couple people midday, and then a couple people in the evening, right? And so right now I have, I got the room to take on one or two more clients in person. But right now I'm not really too worried about it because there's a lot of back end stuff that I focus on as well.
Yeah.
The New Year's is coming up. Right, and let's be realistic. Everyone wants to get healthy for the New Year's.
You ready? This is your Christmas season,
right? Everyone's all right, it's January 1st. It's time for me to start working out. And the unfortunate fact of it is a lot of people said that last year and didn't do anything last year either, right? Or this year, I guess you'd say. So my goal right now is just really focus on bringing something of value that I can help as many people as possible when they come to me for the New Year's. So
when you're, I'm guessing you have some sort of an interview process when you have a new client, right?
Yes.
What are your goals, whatnot? What are you looking for in a client, and what are some of the, maybe surprisingly, some of the things that they're looking for here? Do people come to you saying, I want to get ripped abs? Are they coming to you saying something simple I just want to be able to get in and out of my car without any pain? What are some things that they're saying?
So the two main things that people come to me for is weight loss and pain management. Right. So one thing I'm a firm believer is in investing in myself. And by investing in myself, I'm investing in my clients as well. Right. So, I got that first personal training certification. And so what happened was I got obsessed with knowledge, right? Like I told you, when I was in prison, I read every book, every magazine, every article on fitness, on nutrition, on mindset. I read so much information, and I've been obsessed with it ever since, right? So since getting that first certification, I've gotten about 8 or 9 certifications now, right? And actually, so Chris and Kelsey are, who introduced me to you, to this amazing podcast, right? You had them on your show, and I met them at a pain-free performance coaching certification last year. And so I've been down this like rabbit hole of pain-free performance. Like, so many people are in pain, right? It's crazy. I've been in pain, right? Last year I developed plantar fasciitis while training for a half marathon, and I still ran the half marathon with plantar fasciitis. And for the first 6 months of this year, bro, I could barely walk.
Jeez.
Like I was limping around. Everyone's like, "Are you okay, Coach Paul?" I'm like, I just got a bad feet, right? So I've been obsessed with like how to fix people's bodies. How can I get people out of pain? So now I've got a bunch of clients that have knee pain, ankle pain, hip pain, right? And I'm helping them get out of pain, right? So that's a big thing a lot of people come to me for, is when they're in pain, because I've been able to get myself out of pain. Like I don't struggle with plantar fasciitis anymore. In fact, next Saturday, I'm doing a Spartan Beast, right? Half marathon with 30 obstacles, right? Like
man.
at the beginning of this year, I could barely walk,
Man, I did Tough Mudder once, never again. One and done with that thing.
Yeah,
That's
they're
brutal.
They're kind of tough, right?
It is brutal. Yeah, especially when you do it in Tahoe and it's like 80 degrees outside.
Oh, yeah,
you got the altitude and you got the heat, and you're there for like 11 hours just doing all. Yeah, one and done in my early 20s. So that's very interesting, because you, like Chris and Kelsey, they're great people there too. A lot of the same things is that most people who are looking for a personal trainer are like, I just have pain in an area, I want to get rid of that. Tell me how to do it. It's not the typical, I want to get to 10% body fat or 8% body fat. I want to be ripped with huge 18-inch biceps. It's more like the simple things. And sometimes it can be hard for people who are looking for some help. They're looking for a personal trainer because they don't know where to actually go to. So if you were to give advice to anybody who's in the market to look for a personal trainer, whether they live in our area or not, what are some of the things that you can tell them that can help them filter out the type of person that they're looking for, and also how to convey what it is they actually need in, making them themselves the person that they want to be?
So the biggest suggestion I would say is 2 things: is knowledge and experience, right? So one thing when it comes to experience, not just experience with training other people, but potentially experience with going through things themselves, right? So I find that a lot of people struggle in fitness due to their own mindset, right? A lot of times it's not a physicality thing, it's a mentality, right? I am too old, I am too fat, I am too skinny, I am too young, I have bad knees, I have bad feet, I have a bad back. These thought process that so many people have in their head, why they can't exercise or why they can't get healthy, right, is a self-limiting belief that's stopping them, right? So where I find with a lot of my clients why they choose to work with me is because I understand self-limiting beliefs. Out of anyone, I understand keeping and holding myself back because of my own thought process, right? My inability to grow and change as a human being was due to my thought process that I couldn't be anything more than a thug, anything more than a drug addict, anything more than a criminal, an inmate, whatever that may be, until I chose not to be anything more than something different, right? So I'd say that when I have someone come see me, right, I am very particular on who I work with as well, right? So I think it's important for people to have a vibe with the person that they want to work with. They say that the 2 people that know the most about you are your personal trainer and your hairstylist, right?
Really?
Yeah.
How about that?
Right? My clients, I know all my clients' secrets, right? and I will take those secrets to the grave with me, right? Because they come to me for a physical reason, right? But they leave with a lot more, right? So our time spent together exercising is also an opportunity to grow as human beings, right? And so I'm able to use a lot of my life experience to help my clients grow in areas they might be struggling in, while also helping them get healthy, right? So you got to be, working out is a very vulnerable position, so you've got to trust the person you're working with, so I definitely think that jumping into working with a personal trainer, you shouldn't jump straight into it. You should really look into that. I'd say 90% of my clients have followed me on social media and have learned about me for months before they've reached out and said, hey, I'd like to meet with you in person. That's
incredible. Because you're right. If I don't know why you're doing this, why am I even going to you? Is it because so-and-so told me so? Is it because maybe you used to be Mr. Olympia and that's what I want to be one day, possible? Or is it maybe your style of training doesn't work with my mindset, or vice versa? Maybe I'm not the type of client that's going to do better with you. So I think it's very important that when you first meet with the potential trainer or in your client, is that we're on the same page in terms of where your goals are. This is how I coach, this is what I want to get you. This is where I can get you to. Are you here to make the mindset change? And then don't be afraid to, tell them, hey, it may sound embarrassing if you're a potential client, but you could say honestly, hey, I just want to be able to pick up my grandkid. That's literally all that's important to me. So I just want to help doing that. And you can say, that's beautiful, man. I can help you get there. And this is what we're going to do to it. It's not about how much you could bench or how much you can curl. It's about getting you to what you actually want to do. So what's the future hold for Coach Paul?
So right now, honestly, the future holds more motivational speaking opportunities, right? So that's where I'm trying to pivot a little bit more. I've spoken at a few colleges, a couple high schools, and recently, like I said, I drove up to Pine Grove and spoke to that juvenile fire camp. I'm hoping to get into some juvenile halls as well, and just trying to use my story to help motivate and change some lives. And in order to do that with my business, I'm starting to do some transitional stuff where I am looking to add in for the New Year's. I'm going to start adding some classes onto my schedule and potentially pull on another coach and have them start running some classes for me so that I can have a little bit more free time to do my motivational speaking. In the New Year's, I'm going to be launching an online platform, or relaunching an online platform for people that want to train with me. No matter where they are in the world, they could train with me. I've worked with people from Washington all the way to New York, right? And I now have my own app, so I'm able to really help people dial in their fitness and nutrition through my app, and just help more people moving into the New Year's, but also help them based upon their time and my time, where I can make more time in my life in order to spend some time doing some motivational speaking and just trying to change more lives.
That's big that you're taking the steps, like even making an app, which I'm sure is not the easiest thing in the world to actually do. But the fact that you're doing that step to kind of say, what else can I give to my clients to make it easier for them, to make our interaction more better, to reach out to more people across the country. You got people on the East Coast who are taking your classes via Zoom, and fascinating stuff. Now, how about, here's an interesting one. With as much time as it takes for you to invest in your business, training clients, doing all the admin stuff, how do you have time to, or how do you find a balance with your relationship? How do you guys spend time together? How do you, figure out what the next step is in our life together? Where are we going? How do you, fit the two together?
That's a great question. I love that. So one of the biggest things that I love about my girlfriend is that she's a go-getter as well, right? So she works hard. I work hard. We both support and love each other's decisions, right? And so we've so for me, one thing is I don't have clients before 6 a.m. and my last client will be 6 p.m. I won't work past 7 o'clock because that's around the time she gets home, and I want to be home when she gets home, right? So I won't work late into the evenings because my time with her and with her boys is important. We both do martial arts, right? So, each week, depending on when she has the boys or when we have the boys, we alternate on who goes to martial arts and who watches the boys, or on the weeks when we don't have them, we both go together. One thing we do that makes our relationship really strong is every Sunday we have what's called a board meeting. And I told you at the beginning of this podcast, actually before we started recording, that I've been on a few podcasts, right? Mm-hmm. And one of the podcasts I've been on was a sales and marketing coach named Coach George. I was on his podcast, and he talked about these things that him and his wife do called board meetings. And it's just like when you're in a business, when you run a business, the CEO and the managers, they sit down once a month and they have a conversation about what's going good, what's going bad in the business, and what adjustments need to be made. So we do this every Sunday. Me and my girlfriend, we sit down and we have a conversation about our week, right? And we talk about the good and the bad, right? What did I do that she didn't like, or what did she do that I didn't like? What can I fix? What can she fix? How can we make this relationship work better, right? We also talk about the good. Like, I really appreciated on this night you did this, or you made the bed, or you did really good on this, or like these small things that sometimes we take for granted, mm-hmm. right? And sometimes we forget to tell the people we love, like, hey, you did this one small thing that I really appreciated, and I had a busy day and I didn't tell you that day, but I want to tell you today. And so that makes the relationship so much more valuable, And as a business owner, like one of the things I've set for myself, I've set boundaries for my business, right? So I don't work past 7. I don't work on Sundays, right? Sundays is my day off, right? I don't work, like I'm here today, like this is like, and she understands that, like this is something important because I'm trying to get my story out there to as many people as possible. And I'm trying to, change as many lives as possible. Right. So she supports what I do. Right. But I made sure that like on Sundays, like I don't work. I don't even go into my gym on Sundays. I don't go in there. The doors are locked. The alarm is set and I'm not going in. And what we're gonna figure out what's gonna happen on a Sunday. I've been training for this Spartan race, so Sundays have been like long runs for me for the most part. But other than that, it's like like we have the kids. So we're gonna go to the zoo. We're gonna go out to eat. We're just gonna hang out around the house, watch some movies. We're gonna clean the house. Once a month Sunday is Costco day.
Costco run.
Yeah, we got to do those monthly Costco runs. But it's just that I set that day aside. Right. And yeah, so I definitely find that valuable. One thing I like to do, I think she really appreciates, is I like to randomly like just show up and like take her on dates. So like sometimes she'll go to karate and I'll just like show up to the karate school, and like, hey, you want to go get some food?
Good job, man.
Yeah, I just try to, and she appreciates that, and she does the same for me. She shows up for me a lot, and it's just I'm really blessed to have her.
Yeah. We're going to wrap things up soon. Did you believe it's already almost 2 hours right now? See how time flies? It's a real thing, man, when you're having like a good conversation like this. I want to ask you a little bit about the boys because I think especially because of your experience and what you've been through, how you sort of what you wanted to explain to them. But for anybody who's watching here on YouTube, if you want to hear the bonus conversation that we had prior to all this, you can subscribe to my Patreon page. And as part of a thank you for that, you get access to all the bonus coverage that I film with each one of my guests. So thank you very much for everybody who supports me there. I really appreciate it. But going back to the boys here, with your experience, what is it that because how old are they?
Like 5 and 7.
5 and 7, very young. So with what you've been through, what are some of the lessons that you want to help teach them so they know that either that they have the support network or that what they're going to experience in their youth, that you want to make sure that you help them understand what life is about?
So I think what's very important is to show them a balance between the ability to stand up for yourself, yet still being compassionate and understanding and loving, So one thing I didn't really touch on, and I'll just touch on it briefly. My mom used to write me letters, and she'd always sign it off, peace and love, right? And so now that she's passed away, that's been something that's in my heart, peace and love with all that I do, right? So I try to promote the same thing with the boys, right? I do martial arts, so does my girlfriend, so do her boys, right? So they learn discipline, and they're learning how to defend themselves, but they're also learning peace. They're learning love, they're learning discipline, and they're learning how to just be a healthy human being. Right? So I'm able to promote that in the household with them as well, right? I'm able to teach them that it's okay to talk about your feelings. It's okay to be upset. It's okay to cry if there's something that needs to be cried about, but also be able to stand up for yourself as a human being and stand up for others as well.
Mm-hmm. Very important stuff now, because I think this is a very unique time that we're living in with what kids are exposed to.
Yeah.
When we were growing up, we didn't have smartphones. We had the old like green screen LCD pack bell ones, but nothing like what they have today. And social media wasn't a thing. Mm-mm. So this is a whole new world of challenges that we never had to face. So how do you learn with that and sort of find the way to balance disciplining them while also letting them enjoy what the world has to offer?
So, one thing I'm super impressed with my girlfriend, and she promotes a lot of educational stuff with her boys, right? So their time they spend on either the tablet or their phone is doing educational stuff like wordscapes, learning new vocabulary. They're both her boys are learning Chinese and Hindi because their dad's Indian and she's Chinese, right? So they're learning other languages. So they spend their time they don't do social media. They spend their time like learning stuff, so that's really cool to see and kind of promote that as well. Promote education for them, reading books. One thing is I've always been into reading books, and especially being incarcerated, reading has always been a thing. Mm-hmm. So I love being able to sit down and read with them or have them read to me.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's very important stuff, man. Paul, this has been a great conversation, man. Thank you so much for coming out here and sitting down and talking to me. Really fast, if people wanted to reach out to you, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
The best way you could find me on Instagram is THE_coach_Paul, the Coach Paul. or Facebook, Paul Casey.
All right. And I will put the links to both of those down in the description. So if you're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube, you can just click on that link. It'll take you right to his page. And we're excited to see the future for you, Paul.
Most definitely.
I mean, the way that you've come up from where you've been at and what you've accomplished already, well, yeah, you can let all these things that you go through in life hold you down and say, well, it's, that's the way it is. And then you can run with that, or you can take a step up at some point and say, how am I going to get to a better position? I'm done with this lifestyle here. What do I need to do to go and make myself better? And greatest country in the world, man. For all of the problems that we have, nobody's perfect. Still the greatest country in the world. You can still build your own business. You can still find a purpose. You can still make an impact in people's lives. And great thing to see from you, Paul. But this has been a great conversation. Thank you so much. And thank you, everybody, for watching and listening. And please reach out to Paul if you have any questions. And I'm sure he'd be more than happy to listen to you and get back to you. Thank you so much, Paul. Everybody have a good one.